Welcome to the One Lap Heroes podcast, because what the world needs now is another automotive podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 7. We are steadily approaching the teens of the One Lap Heroes podcast. And today, what are we talking about, Kostas? Why are you pointing fingers at me already?
Do we have something special for the 10th episode of the One Lap Hero podcast? First of all, will it ever be available in a platform to hear it?
Internal sources have told me that we have filmed some special podcast content that includes guests. Then maybe the 10th is a good chance to put the first one out. I don't know. I don't know because this is just rumors, to be honest.
I believe the Sunday before the 10th, before the Tuesday that's gonna be the 10th One Lap Hero podcast, we are gonna tell them more about this. What is the topic of today's podcast? We are coming fresh from the Nürburgring 24-hour, an event that is very important, an event that our man Gab was actually racing in not one but two cars. But we are not gonna talk racing because you guys actually proved. Exactly, you proved to us that actually it's not a particularly popular topic, and then we did the driving techniques, and
you ignored that.
This
as well.
Also proved to be.
Although, Kostas, I have to say that maybe it was just also a little bit our fault. Like we went a little bit too
random.
Too random. Yes, we just let it ride. But we are learning about this. Like this is for us is also a new experience. So we don't hit the mark every time. Actually, almost never. But
I think you're absolutely right. I believe that maybe I don't think we went complacent, but I believe that we felt a little bit comfortable that you guys would be willing to follow any type of conversation we had. And then during the filming of that actual sixth podcast, we actually went a little bit on a tangent that we couldn't include.
Exactly.
And I think that was actually a bit of a mistake in a way, because that tangent was an interesting conversation. Not one that could be in that, but maybe it's material for a future one. And me watching the podcast after as a viewer, I noticed that we actually put quite a lot of effort discussing, like data systems and getting coaching. Actually, two things that cost you money, and then the actual driving mistakes and advice about driving were actually towards the end of the video. So if someone missed the first part, you actually missed all the good information.
We went for a very long tangent in the middle. So in reality, when we got back to it, we were really tired because we have been talking like 3 hours by that stage.
And this is what's gonna happen right now, because we are actually 10 minutes in the podcast and you don't know what's the
and we didn't
topic.
even introduce the topic. Okay, go for it. What are we talking about?
Let's fix this. We actually are talking about Porsche, and more importantly, we're actually talking about why Porsche is actually winning so much. And you might be thinking that I'm actually talking about like a 24-hour win, but actually I don't mean that specific thing. I mean
in life,
Porsche
you mean?
as a brand winning. So we are going to discuss a little bit of history. Then we're going to discuss about like the popular current models and why they are actually so popular with journalists, and why they get all these very good reviews. And basically, I would say for the last 10 years, in every time like a magazine has like a best drivers cars or car of the year challenge, like there's always a Porsche there. And if they don't win, it's because they win the one the year before, and they basically have to say, okay, the GT3 or the GT4 or whatever they have there, it's gonna be like the second or the third car. But almost always, universally, the press loves these cars. And then we're gonna talk about what kind of Porsches we actually like. So why we like the brand and what would be like our dream cars. And we are going to finish it off with Porsche in racing. And we are even going to speak a little bit about like a 24-hour race. Gab can do a very small rant about what happened this year. But this is going to be something that is not about racing. And it's not just about the history of the brand. We're just going to try in 1 hour to compile everything.
Eventually, we know from your comments that you generally like that when I'm ranting about something. So we are designing, we are thinking about making it like a stable of the show, like a 15 minutes rant about whatever I want to rant about. And I'm gonna get my 15 minutes of ranting here, I tell you.
Listen, personally, I absolutely hate when you're ranting about things, but because you occasionally allow me to rant, I think that the only nice thing to do is to also give you the opportunity to do exactly the same. Exactly. Because One Lap Heroes, in the end, it's all about giving, it's not even
Okay,
about
so you said about Porsche history. I have to say I'm not I'm not particularly into the history of the brand, and this is where you come in, because I know that you are more of a student of the thing.
Correct. And I would say that this is also, guys, Porsche has been talked so much in the recent years, especially in the press and in articles, and there has been so many videos online about it. But I actually believe that the most interesting part of its history is not one that is being talked about, because you probably realize that Porsche has one of the darkest histories out of all the car brands out there. People that actually want to work with Porsche, of course, they could not really speak about it. Like if you go to the Porsche Museum, a place that we actually love and we have been multiple times, you will see that the start of the brand, is a bit of a topic that you cannot discuss. It is clear that if you put the dates together, there's like this big historical event, that actually happened in Europe in the 30s. Yeah. And we are located in Germany, which is a bit of a taboo to talk about like the World War and what exactly happened there. And I do believe that Porsche has a very dark history, especially at its core. It is a very tantalizing subject, one that I cannot understand how people can get involved in situations like this and how we are able to do so much bad and so much good. But it's clear that out of war comes some technical innovation, and coming out of war, and especially like this happened separately, like in the UK. This happened separately, like in the US, like the military coming back from the war. They actually sort of gave a little bit like this birth into the hot rodding scene and tuning. And I would say exactly the same way, Germany trying to rebuild itself, like great engineers actually did some very interesting things. I will not speak about the historical event per se, because we don't have the education, and I don't think that this is the channel to speak about like the war and what this actually means. But we're gonna speak a little bit about the brand history, and the brand history, the history of like Ferdinand Porsche and then Ferry Porsche, the guy that actually we owe the 911 to, is particularly interesting. I would recommend you to find a book that is called Excellence Was Expected. It's a book by Carl Ludwigsen. It's personally like my favorite historic book on the brand. It is a fantastic book. It's huge. It's difficult to read, but it's written if you want to see how like the history of a brand should be documented. Carl Ludwigsen basically does the textbook example. It's a fantastic book. Like no matter how many things you think you know about the brand, you read this book.
I think the viewers can sort of already pick up on the fact that you generally like Porsches, right? Like,
no. So for
like,
me, it's very
not
difficult.
like, like he likes Porsche despite the dark past. Like this is eventually all this massive introduction that he did was like, it could be summarized in few words. Like, despite the dark start of Porsche, I still, no matter what, like it. And this is a statement to how good, or like this is a statement about how much I like it, because if I can overlook how it came about, then
Exactly. We said many times that here at One Lap Heroes we love flows, and basically the history of Porsche is exactly this. They took like a flowed design. I do believe that the 911 is a flowed design, especially when it comes to dynamics. So it was never conceived. The 911 was never conceived in essence to be the ultimate sports car. It was conceived as the continuation of a previous design, and the same German engineering that basically takes something average and improves it by an X amount, consistently year after year, is actually what gave birth to the modern 911.
This is what they wanted to do with people, right? At one point.
Unfortunately, yes, and this is what I'm saying. Like, these are all concepts that I like internally. I don't know how I feel about them, but when applied to a specific car, creates sort of the car that we as One Lap Heroes like. We like flowed cars, and for me, the 911 is always going to be a very interesting concept, because clearly in my head, there is a structure.
So you're saying like the fact that they started with something that wasn't supposed to be good, and they eventually made it good. Is this part of the appeal that it has to you? So like,
Yeah.
okay, it's
I,
interesting.
I actually admit it because this is something that many owners, Porsche owners, they might try to sort of avoid saying. They say no, the format is not bad. This drivetrain having the engine behind the rear
Well,
wheels is
it
not a problem.
has its
It clearly
advantages.
is.
It has it,
But
it has a set of advantages like aerodynamic front section and traction and weight distribution in some instances. But um, you are right. Eventually, it began in life as
it is a
a
compromise.
Volkswagen. It was a Volkswagen Beetle, and they tried to make it into a sports car. So if you want to boil it down to the simplest possible common denominator, this is what they did. Like they took a Beetle and said, "Okay, let's make it faster." And then, of course, now it has nothing to do with a Beetle, but this is eventually how it began. And I find it funny that this is how, not funny. Like I totally get how this can be part of the fascination behind the brand, because it's like overcoming obstacles like that. Potentially, you could argue that you put up yourself, but because they could have started with something else, or like they could. But anyway, irrelevant. But I'm saying, and I agree with you
No,
that
no, not irrelevant at all. Yeah, it's a very,
no,
very
no,
good
no, no.
point.
I'm saying like relevant to the next things that I'm gonna say is that I agree with you that many owners, especially the genuine ones, like eventually Porsche now is a luxury brand also. Like so it covers also a different kind of audience that is the engine could be electric, diesel, or put on the side or in the front, or half in the front or half in the side. It could have side wheel drive. They wouldn't matter because what they want is just like a very expensive car to enjoy a luxury product and to be seen in. And there's nothing wrong
And the
with it.
acceptance.
There's nothing wrong with it. I think buying a Porsche, because of its motorsport heritage, which we will talk about, it makes it more of course, like you could buy even Bentley though has an heritage, like, but you could buy a very expensive, like when you
Bentley blowers.
yeah. But what I'm saying is like if you buy a Maybach, it's just a very expensive car, and if you buy a Porsche instead, or you buy a Ferrari, even more, like you're sort of making a statement,
If you buy
hey.
a Lamborghini,
Yeah, but like for example, like if you buy a Porsche instead of a Lambo, you are saying I want a sports car, I want something flashy and expensive, but I also want something that is that is real, that has real heritage. So you are
you
trying
bring
to.
you bring a very good point. So I would actually say that in reality, none of the people that we're going to talk about now are following this channel. But in reality, the people that actually buy GT3s and GT3 RSs and GT2 RSs are mostly like lawyers, and they're dentists and doctors and people that are making a lot of money, and they are educated. Traditionally educated, because I don't consider this the only form of education. And then you will see that the people are actually buying flashier cars, like
It's
McLarens
difficult
and
to see
Lamborghinis and Ferraris.
a footballer, for example, that buys a GT3 RS or a GT2 RS.
Exactly, it's
Like
not
they would
fascinating,
buy,
but you
they
easily
buy a
a
Turbo
McLaren
S,
or a Lambo.
or if they are buy a Porsche, they buy the fastest one on paper, or like,
Exactly. And
or
you will
the
see
most
like
expensive one.
athletes,
Yeah.
exactly, athletes, models, new money, people that made their money like with investment, but not the real ones, like real estate and stuff like this, that you could maybe come into money, but you're not like traditional money, and these people sort of navigate towards this. Of course, none of what we are talking right now is things that would be accepted in a traditional discussion, and most of the actual owners would not accept any of this. But having the opportunity to work like for years with people that own multiple cars and multiple of these cars, I will tell you that there is clearly a pattern, and that pattern
Like
almost always.
I have to agree that in my experience, but we've said it I think in other instances as well. Like you go to a track day, in especially of course in here in Central Europe, like Germany, like in this area, France, Germany, Belgium, etc. And out of 100 cars, like literally 85 are Porsche, or like, okay, let's say 80 are Porsche, 10 are BMWs, and 10 is rest. Like I'm not. I'm,
It's
and I'm
crazy,
not.
yeah?
And it's and like the distribution is like that. And to some extent, I have to. This can only mean that the vast majority, not the vast majority, but a good proportion of owners that go and buy these cars now in 2021, they actually buy them. They actually buy them like and use them as they are supposed to be used. And this is something that brings joy to my heart, because if you look
It's very cool.
like if you look like if you go on forums and you look at whatever journalists, of course there is people that buy GT3 RSs as I don't know, and as a car, but I have to say that probably the owner, the clubs of owners that buy these cars are probably the ones that know the most about what they're buying. Like, you don't buy a GT3 RS because you want a flashy car or because you want an expensive car. So you buy a Turbo S for that, or you buy a Panamera Turbo S, or you buy whatever, but you don't buy like a GT3 RS for that. And this creates like a this is actually, I think, this is also, by the way, this is also why the brand is so cool to some extent, because you sort of buy into you buy into an elite.
You buy into an idea,
An
and
idea,
a club,
that
an
you
elite,
know,
and
that you are a track enthusiast, that you are the one that knows, like, you buy the car because you know it.
For sure. And actually, Gab, you should be very familiar with this, because this is how people end up buying a Lotus. Like, you
Correct,
didn't do
correct,
this,
correct.
but the majority of Lotus owners, they end up buying a Lotus on the premise that buying this specific car, you are part of that elite, of that closed group that actually knows cars, understands cars,
Correct,
and
yes.
drive cars.
It is part of the
most
thing.
of them, they don't track them, but they know that the moment I decide this car, because with the same
So
money
why
that I bought
that
this
car
Lotus
instead of,
Elise,
because you have your answer, like you have it like already, like the shotgun is already there, charged up with the bullet in it,
With
and
the
as soon as
answer, exactly.
and as soon as somebody asks, but why didn't you buy a Cayman? Well, because this is a real driver's car, and
Correct.
that
This is
true.
the perfect way to lead into the second big point that I want to make, like in this conversation, like Porsche the brand, Porsche the idea, and I believe that this is gonna be something, and I'm not joking, this is gonna be something that is gonna be taught at some point, like in marketing schools, because you might think that these things are random, but I do believe that Porsche worked very hard to manufacture something, and that is the idea of the brand. And I will actually break down the recipe a little bit. I don't believe that they did it 100% like it wasn't 100%
Scientific.
planned. Exactly. But I think they used a lot of intuition. They actually happen to have like a lot of very smart people there, so they felt it. And the moment they saw that's actually happening, they actually managed to capitalize sort of on everything that would create a very strong brand. And I want to actually break down a little bit on pieces on how I personally believe that it happened, and I believe that you're gonna find it also a bit interesting. So we started about history for a reason, and of course this could be 5 podcasts by itself, the history. So I'm not gonna speak any more about this, but I will tell you that the Porsche Classic brand by itself was actually what they engineered the modern Porsche brand to be, while it was clearly a model that was not successful. So the traditional Porsches, the one that you used to know, the German quality, the good car, the overbuilt car, this was something that was almost bringing the company to its end, to its financial demise. Exactly. So
It pretty much did. They were bankrupt.
Exactly. The best air-cooled cars, the 964 and the 993, the end of the air-cooled era, that they were cars much better than their competitors would be, built to last longer, with that satisfactory sound when you close the door and this and that. These were the cars that people were not buying enough.
The turning point for Porsche was the 986 Boxster.
986, exactly.
So,
I'm
and this is probably the worst engineered car. Like, no, I'm not saying, but hey,
I'm gonna arrive exactly there. So basically, they had this overbuilt. They have these overbuilt cars that they didn't sell very well new, and they were also tanking a little bit, like on the used car market.
They were worthless Porsches.
However, there was a huge turning point, a and it is, as Gab said, it is the 986 platform, which actually is the 986, the 996, and then basically
It's the same
the
car
987 Cayman.
eventually, so.
And there is this famous story about like Porsche asking for help and Toyota engineers going to the production line, and they couldn't believe how inefficient this whole thing was. I want you to understand this, like the same Japanese manufacturers that they were trying to break through, like in the US, in the 80s and 90s, and it was very difficult. Then sort of at the later part of the 90s, coming back to give feedback to Porsche, like a brand that traditionally did very well
But because
in North America.
they had different problems in the sense that the Japanese manufacturers, they lacked the brand, so like they were building really really good cars, but nobody knew them and nobody believed in the brand, and Porsche was over engineering their cars, but they were still going bankrupt because they couldn't produce enough and whatever.
Exactly, they kept too much stock of materials. They at the same time they had to rely on external suppliers. So it was a very complicated way to make a car. It made for a very good car, and it was a lot of things that were hand assembled, but it wasn't a good way to make a car. And now I want to tell you something, because these shifts sort of happened at the same way. So at the time that Porsche is actually selling their cheaper car, and they go to this like multiple cars built on the same platform, and they go from the air-cooled engine to a water-cooled engine, which for the purists was like the end of it all. And it's sort of the same
air-cooled, dry-sumped engines. Like this is like motorsport stuff, and then the next car you build is the Boxster, which is junk. But like the jump between.
Which is and it isn't.
But the huge, like the jump is huge, like it's massive from the 993 or whatever.
And at the same time, they take all this money, and this is why I tell you, this is going to be taught in marketing schools. At the same time that this is happening, they are making, theoretically, their worst car, which we are going to arrive towards the end of this video, and we're going to tell you also why it wasn't the worst car. But anyway, they're making this car their worst car. They're taking all this money. They are about to introduce the first SUV, because whatever the 986 did, then the Cayenne also did. And basically, they take all this money, all this profit that they generated, and they put it back into engineering better cars. And this is very important. The same era that brought us these cheaper water-cooled cars is the era that brings the GT department, and we have the first GT3 and GT3 RS. And we have the most important thing, the turn on Porsche embracing their past. And I want to speak a little bit about this because I consider this very, very important. So, the majority of companies, the moment they sell you the car, okay, and especially the moment they stop supporting you, like you're outside of warranty and you go to sort of go, the cars go to the second owners or the third owners, everything is finished. What Porsche did, Porsche actually understood the heritage of the 911. Because maybe they lacked a little bit of faith on the product, they said we should actually embrace our past, and they went out of their way to tell you that 7 out of 10 911s, the 70% of them, they are still on the road today. And this, for a company like Mazda, for example, like Mazda has this huge audience of Mark 1 MX-5 owners, but for them, they are not. This is not something really embraced. Like it's not part of the heritage of the company actively, especially like in Europe. They actually exactly they don't care at all. Porsche went out of their way to find all these old owners that maybe they weren't the customers currently, and maybe they wouldn't be. Key word being wouldn't, because they ended up being, and actually reached out in all to them, and actually reached out to their clubs, and actually managed to create something that is invaluable. They actually managed to create an even stronger community, and it was built at the era that they were actually building cars completely the opposite. Exactly. And I want you to understand how funny this is. So we, as car guys, especially like me and Gab, we have spoke about this openly a lot. We actually hate a little bit like this modern group VW cars built on the same platform, all these Golfs and Seats and Audis, all the same fucking car. An idea sort of championed by Ferdinand Piech. The same guy that actually gave us the 917 race car. So the same guy as a young, particularly brilliant guy, like a guy that could actually be an episode of a podcast. The same guy that gave us the 917 race car because he believed that Porsche should go out there and win Le Mans and do all these things. The same guy, many years after, actually created this thing that we hate, which by the way made VW the giant that it was. And And there's even more interesting because at the same time there's all this VW Porsche history that we're not going to talk in this video, but it's a very interesting thing, like the financial side of things. So, but we're just going to talk cars about this. So at the same time that all these things are happening, Porsche is embracing guys, guys like the R Group in the US, guys like the Magnus Walker, Magnus Walker, the equivalent for BMW, or for Mazda or for Honda. That guy doesn't exist, like this guy customizing Civics and S2000s, or keeping NSXs alive. For modern Honda, they don't exist.
Well, you could
for
say
Mazda,
that you could argue that it would be impossible for Honda or Mazda to embrace them all because there's millions of them.
No, but I disagree. Because exactly of how many 911s were out there, it was also difficult for Porsche. And I don't believe that it happened in one way. I don't believe that it was a clear strategic plan. I think it was a bit of also an accident that happened. But at the same time, I guarantee you that the majority of marketing departments, when they saw something like the Urban Outlaw film and they saw a guy like Magnus Walker, and they said, no, absolutely, this doesn't fit our marketing plan. We have nothing to do with this guy. Like, and imagine, see Porsche champion that guy, getting to travel around the world to be at events. And when I say this guy, I don't mean that one guy like Magnus. It's a general thing. If you are here during the Old Timers weekend, you actually see how much effort Porsche goes into have like a presence there.
It is it's a model that should be looked into for sure from other manufacturers, and probably is being looked at or has been looked at, and it is not much different to. So like Ferrari does something that is similar, but in more of a like how can I say, like an oppressive way, such as like you are part of the family. Yeah, when you buy a Ferrari, everybody says like I buy a Ferrari because of the experience of buying a Ferrari and the history or whatever. Like this is similar. This is sort of a similar, you could say, attraction as to the one that you have towards Porsches potentially, like the history of the brand and what it represented and what. But Ferrari has a different way to enforce his power. Like
exactly, I think Ferrari is a bit more oppressive. Do it.
It is a bit more oppressive. Like you are not you cannot. Like I remember something like
the things that you cannot do.
Exactly, I remember like what was the DJ, like that mouse that had this. Neon cat and like Ferrari going after him, like this is ridiculous because you alienate potentially a whole new brand of a whole new range of potential owners. And you could argue, but I don't want those owners. But that owner.
That's the mistake.
Yeah, because when I was like when a 20-year-old guy is he grows up, and when he's 40 he's a different person. So you might not want the 20-year-old guy, but you might want that guy that is now 20-year-old when he's 40, and you can only get him if you don't alienate him in the meantime. And by doing these kind of things, you certainly do.
Exactly. And I believe that there are many brands that they do this better or worse. Like if you buy like a Koenigsegg, the community is smaller, and there might be a WhatsApp group, and you actually speak with the guys. And if you have like a Pagani, you go for the annual rally, and many owners bring the cars back to the factory for service, and this and that, and it still feels like a tight knit group. And the same goes for Singers. Like you have a 911 Singer, you are part of like a special group. Cool. These are all interesting, but I believe what Porsche did, it was actually different in the sense that it was sort of engineered to create this wider audience. It was engineered to not be elitistic in a way. So actually, you were building a premium brand by accepting, normal people, and at the same time, taking advantage of this being also an aspiration, like this idea of the old brand,
it was the thing is that the Porsche has been always the Porsche has been like the everyday sports car that you could imagine being able to afford. So like I know it's different now, but it's I know it's a bit different now.
But many companies could do the same way, like Lamborghini has a fantastic story, but they didn't capitalize on it. And I go back to it. I consider Mazda. I didn't say it randomly. I consider Mazda a fantastic example, of a company that has a huge power in the numbers of current owners. All these MX-5 owners, they have second cars and they will buy third cars. And I highly doubt that Mazda is capitalizing on it, especially not in the way that Porsche does, because all these people, they don't feel it cheated. These people end up buying Cayennes and Macans, and end up buying Boxsters and end up ordering the next GT3, and they don't feel cheated. They don't feel that they are part of a marketing machine. And I guarantee you that they are part of a marketing machine.
Of course.
And Porsche manages to do it in such a cool way that even when you understand a little bit the fad, you actually going to be part of it. And I will build now the third block. How they do this. And they do this by spending a huge amount of money, because the things that for many companies, the model is finished, the promotion is finished, and that is that. That whole experience is finished there. And of course, if the journalists like it, you try to make cool events so they like it even more, and you sort of run that train as well, and then everything is finished. Porsche is also the brand that is actually putting the most money into the coolest experience program after. So I was very recently, Gab, in the Porsche Experience Center in Hockenheim, and there is at least 2 very cool ones also in the US, and
they are everywhere
some
now.
fantastic stuff happening in China,
and they're gonna be a lot of money now.
You're gonna see how it is. And I was in the one in Hockenheim, and it was very cool thing. Like, I honestly didn't have been to Hockenheim like a few years back. You have been as well. Nothing was there, and then like literally I go to the end of last year and I see what they've built, and it was shocking. And they have a plan. I'm not gonna speak much more about this here because we actually going to cover many things. If you guys find this this whole experience thing like something interesting, we're gonna come and speak about it in the future. So they're investing a ton of money on creating these experience programs that are going to follow after you buy your first Porsche. And this is how you actually create these models that people that can afford one Porsche,
this is how they sell a GT3 to a guy that just bought a Cayman.
And this is how they sell the guy that already has a GT3, they sell him the next one and the next one. This is why getting an allocation is so difficult. This is why people actually love these cars. We are not going to speak more about marketing stuff right now. I find them particularly interesting. I don't think that's traditional marketing stuff, but we're not going to speak about this right now. I want to transition a little bit to press and why current 911s and Caymans, they get all these good reviews. They are actually very good cars, by the way. It's not but why specifically they get all these reviews, and why you see so many of these journalists, actually owning these cars. You have guys like Chris Harris, he actually had the GT3 Touring. He had all these cool cars, but he actually had GT3 Touring, car got crashed. He actually got another one. This is not because it was paid by Porsche. This is not because
because he liked it.
Pocket. This is because he honestly liked the car. And then you see guys like, I don't know, you probably watch Carfaction, and you see guys like Henry Caswell, and you see him review the 991.2 GT3, and it is clear the guy, when he has the money, or if he had the money, he would go out and he would buy that car. And this is a little bit in when I was younger, I was working at the company that had the Greek Evo magazine, and almost every single of the guys that worked there, every single from the editor-in-chief to every single guy working there, all the editors, the young editors, they all had MX-5s. And in almost every car company that I've been, many people actually had MX-5s. And it's the same a little bit with press people, journalists that do this for many years. They don't tend to own cars because they actually get to drive constantly free press cars. But if they do own cars, they actually own a Porsche. You should actually go and check how many of the famous journalists that you follow and they actually own Porsches. And I mean them buying their car with their own money, not as long terms or... It is not a random thing. It is not a random thing that they will even they would own older Porsches. So why do journalists love modern 911s? Gab, I think you know very well why.
I think it's a mix. I think it's a mix of things. So I want to start from the most controversial point, in my opinion. So I think there is a lot of confirmation bias and the fact that a Porsche is good because it has to be good. So we are all not I wouldn't say we are victims of the marketing machines, but we are human beings, and we are susceptible to this kind of behavioral traits like confirmation bias, and basically we have a double standard. So if we have a double standard on everything, and if you go into something believing already or thinking that it must be good, then you can see many things that are not good, but you're still gonna downplay them and come out of the experience saying, by the way, despite these small things, the car is amazing. Like the 992, the 991, they put the electrical power steering. Everybody said it has nothing to do with what a Porsche should be. but anyway, it's a great sports car. So like it cannot be both things. Like so, and you as a viewer, as a reader, uh, as an enthusiast, when you see this, you have to be a bit smart and critical in the sense that you have to walk in knowing. And I think the journalists are trying their best, like generally trying their best, but we touched this a little bit on during in the comments section of the MX-5 ND review. Like you have to imagine a scenario which is not a realistic one, in the sense that Porsche delivers a new 911, which for sure is much better than the generation before in every measurable way. They make sure that they communicate every single thing that is better. They invite you to the presentation in a fantastic hotel where you eat fantastic food. Then you in the next morning you drive fantastic roads, and the cars are brilliant because of course they are brilliant. So like they are objectively brilliant cars, but so much of it is already you going into the experience feeling that, oh, this is gonna be a fantastic car. Like nobody goes there and says, I think this Porsche is gonna be shit. Like I don't think that many walk into the experience genuinely believing it. So like maybe they say to themselves, I would try to be as objective as I can. I think this Porsche can be shit. But it would be such a surprise if it would be, and I think it is. I think this is a big part of uh, why eventually the cars are being so well received. In my opinion, I have driven standard Porsches and I've driven GT3s. In my opinion, the gap between, and I know that this might be controversial, but the gap between what a GT car is and a standard Porsche is huge. So like it's not even, I have not driven recently. I have not driven a 992 Carrera and a 992 GT3, but 997,
I believe the gap closed, but it still is a big gap.
in the 997, 996, the gap is massive. So like, and I think is that they, as I said, marketing wise, why the Porsches are so well received is because the GT cars, so the special operations cars, are fantastic and brilliant and exceptional and special in every way. And this sort of trickles down in the sense that you think that the normal one also is, but in reality, the normal one is a much more of a flawed car than. So it's like buying a Boxster. Like I'm saying, like the Boxster is a great sports car, but when it came out, the S2000 would probably be the better sports car to own. But one is a Porsche, so it must be better. It's undeniable that there is a lot of this going on in the backgrounds, and we cannot really be completely out of it because we are humans and we cannot do
Exactly.
anything.
And this is why I brought the journalists up, because I want to tell you that even the people that it's their profession to do this, okay, they sort of in the end up sort of buying. I'm not saying buying the hype, but I also kind of mean this because I will tell you something. So we, after our experience, we love the GT cars, but I want Gab you to remember the first time that you drove like a 991 GT3 RS on the limit, and while up until 8 tenths, it's a fantastic car. The last tenths, you didn't like it. Do you remember this? You remember the rear wheel steering, how it is the car, like on the absolute ragged edge, like literally the last bit of performance. You remember?
I remember that I drove several models, so like several different cars from that generation, and some of them were better than others, which struck me in the sense that these are not modified cars, so like stock cars for all intents and purposes, with relatively new cars with same brand of tires and same pressure, more or less, like 1/10 here and there, but is not going to change the world. And some of them were really weird. So this struck me like the inconsistent, the inconsistent quality, like. But maybe it's a bit too rude to say it, but the inconsistent driving performance from the car. And I think the very first 991s, GT3s were a little bit. I think they were great cars, but I think I wasn't. I'm still not a great fan of the active rear steering. So much so that there is a whole community of people tracking them that remove the rear steering completely from the cars, because the rear steering makes it work different at low speed and high speed. So like it is very inconsistent. So you normally want a car that you know what's gonna do, and not a car that changes his mind depending on what speed he's driving. So under certain speed it does something. So eventually you know how it works. Like if you drive a certain under a certain level of speed, the wheels turn in one direction, and for the same corner, and if you specifically they turn the opposite direction if you are going slow, and if you're going faster they turn into the same direction, so you eventually have a longer wheelbase and like more stability. But and this is a bit weird when you drive on track, as I would imagine, potentially quicker, but it is a very weird sensation.
Still, between the competition, would you still, between, if you had to buy like a car of that budget or even double the budget that year, would you buy anything else than a GT3?
I told you already. I know this is a very. I told you this is a very unpopular view, but to me, the 991 it never did anything to me. Like literally, I never really liked it. And
Stop! I knew this, but I will tell you something right now. I want you to go back to the start of this year. You were at a racetrack and you drove a GT2 RS and a Ferrari Pista, like the one after the other.
Yeah.
Tell me your experience.
The GT2 RS was the better car in the sense that if I would have to buy one of the two cars, for the track, look for the track, there is not even a comparison. And I'm sure that this was a more of a striking experience because you had them. I had the opportunity back to back, like the
Same day, same driver, same track.
Same car, same track, literally.
One of the best Ferraris of our times.
And already improved in the sense that it already had KW's multiple adjustment coilover that were adjusted properly, and alignment. And the other car was showroom fresh.
Showroom GT2 RS. Huh?
And the showroom GT2 RS was quicker, and it lasted longer.
Not
and
only quicker,
didn't have
you
a
liked
problem.
It more.
Yeah, I liked it more because it drove a lot more. I liked it more because it drove like what a race car, a lot closer to what I would expect a race car to be. It was very predictable, very consistent, and but this was the last generation. But I also drove recently a 991.1 GT3 RS. And I was surprised by how easy it was because I remember them being horrible, and then all of a sudden this car was very good. So I don't know if Porsche changed something. I generally don't know, or the owners learned about the car and did something to them. But I drove recently a stock GT3 991.1 GT3 RS, and I said, okay, this is very good. So like this is a very cool car. And I wouldn't buy it still, but now it's fun. Like I drove it on the Notchleife, it's cool, it's predictable, it's not like scary. And because I remember the first 991s, they were like, what? Like it's a bit like strange to drive.
But this is why I want us to go there, because I know that when these cars were first new, we were a little bit critical. I also remember the same, like when Caymans went from hydraulic steering to electric steering, and when the 911 went to electric steering, and even today, when we got here, our first 91.2 GT3, it was a manual car. It was like a beautiful car, white 91.2 GT3 manual, fantastic car. And I remember our boss is a guy that actually he doesn't really like Porsches, but he likes cars that work on track. So in the start, he was not super keen about the front end, a bit of understeer, this and that. But he kept driving the car, and the car has a fantastic engine, and it has one of the best manual gearboxes out there. So I honestly, in my humble opinion, out of all the things that I've driven, if you want a good naturally aspirated engine and a good gearbox, nothing beats the 911.2 GT3. Like honestly, nothing beats this 4-liter engine. It's a crazy engine. So in my humble opinion, the engine package is so good, and it comes with a correct driving position and a car that has brakes that are not gonna fade and a suspension that works.
Yeah, but this is exactly. This is exactly. It's
not a perfect car.
But this is exactly. So this is what Porsche. So So to me, I am completely like. This is totally my opinion. Like, if Porsche didn't have the GT fleet, I wouldn't care at all about the brand, like literally at all, because the GT cars are so good when you, especially especially at being on the track, which is insane, because this is such a more percentage of the cars that get sold, and of those, so only a small percentage goes on track, and of those, only a small percentage of the mileage is being driven on track. So it is incredible how percentage-wise, are such a small part of the ownership experience and the brand like authenticity. Such a small part is like that 1% justifies the other 99%. Like I would buy. Let me tell you something. I would buy now 986 boxes used to drive on track only because within me, my brain says, okay, if they built the 996 GT3 that good, there must be a chance for the Boxer too. So and this is the magic of Porsche. And this Ferrari doesn't have this for me, because you drive the 488 Pista. I have no interest in Ferraris. If you drive the 488 Pista on the track, is a road car, very very fast on the straight line road car. Very very flamboyant experience. I think on the road is an animal. Like how the gearbox feels. It's like a very like a hydraulic feeling when you pull the gears. It's cool. It's like, but as a track tool, never in my life I would buy one. Like never in my life. And the same goes for Lamborghinis, and the same goes for other like expensive brands. So like I would not buy anything like. Giving me all the money in the world, I would only buy a GT car, like a Porsche GT car. Nothing else I would touch. And this is because they are good on track, and being them so good. And this is, I think, if we could connect to what we discussed before. So like them building such amazing cars on track. Like for the track, for dual purpose, like a road car that can do 200,000 kilometers and that yet can do that on the track as stock. It is amazing. And I remember when we drove that that Cayman GTS a few years ago. That was a bone stock standard showroom car with showroom tires, and the car was an animal on track.
Let me give you a little bit of context, guys. We have taken delivery of a brand new 981 Cayman GTS. This is a car that, like on paper, has nothing fancy. Absolutely nothing fancy.
Well, for those days, because for now it is a fancy engine, because apparently now the car is a 4-cylinder. But
still, I would say that for the time being, it's a car that actually sits sort of in the middle of the range. It's not like a Cayman GT4. It's a completely normal car. It's not even a Cayman R. There is no GT4 at the time, but still it's coming. We know that it's coming. So that car has no reason to be particularly special on track. It's 100% stock. And it is also on the bad tires. Is it like on Pirelli?
The Pirelli P0.
Or Pirelli. So actually the bad tire of the two. And Gab is taking it out for a lap at Spa. He is not on a mission to do like the ultimate lap, by the way. It's just the race navigator is in the car, there's cameras, and I tell him go out, do a couple of laps. And he actually comes back in a staggering lap time. If my memory serves me well, it's a 2:48 around Spa, which if you know your cars, it is actually stupidly fast for a car on street tires, and especially one that was completely untouched. And also, on top of this, he actually loved the experience. He actually came out of the car. You could not believe that.
I could not believe it how good it was. Yeah.
Stock normal Cayman, exactly. And this on steroids is what the GT3s feel, and the GT3 RS is same, and the GT4 is the same. And all these things, what Gab said is 100% the point that I was trying to make. Building a brand is one of the things that even the biggest experts in marketing, they cannot understand how
it's a little bit black magic. It's like
exactly
it's a little bit just happens. Like
and then again, I don't believe that in Porsche's case it's happenstance. I don't believe that it just happened. I believe that it was actually carefully they cultivated the environment for it to happen. And I also believe that they managed to get so many good people in the company to create this type of cars. So you actually should have the guy that will actually fight for the GT department to exist, and the guy that actually understands how these models have to compromise, so it's also a successful financial thing, so they can actually do also the other things. And you have the marketeers that are going to sell you the Macans and the Cayennes, and they're going to prepare you for this new electrified era while you are still doing cool NA cars that are basically very good on a very small activity. And that small activity, although it's that small, and not only a very small part of your actual audience is actually going to do that activity, but it's so important that that DNA goes in every single of these high-level road cars, and that sort of shapes the brand. And all these things coming together, it's what makes Porsche very cool for us. So I personally like much more the old Porsche cars. I like how they look, and I like their flows. But one of the reasons that I like them so much is for sure me experiencing all the modern cars, and knowing how good the modern cars are. So somehow, even in a guy as strange as me, a guy that thinks that he would put like the engineering side of things and the actual car side of things above everything else, and a guy like Gab that he would say that I would put like driving first, even to guys like us and all these journalists that we're talking about, we still, in the end, we are walking examples of that marketing machine actually working.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
both me and Gab and Chris Harris and your local truck guys that have these cars, we would all, when we would have the money, we would go there in a dealership and buy a GT4 or a GT3. We would actually do it. This is the funny thing. So we are actually the guys, that you hear preaching about and the guys that love MX-5.
And the thing
we would
is,
go and buy them.
And the thing is that we would go now and buy a cheap Boxster because of debt, because of not being able to afford a GT car. We would try to want to get a piece of it by buying something cheap, which is eventually you're not gonna get what you want. So and this is the magic of the brand, because the Boxster is not a GT3, nowhere near a GT3, and no matter how much money you're gonna spend on it, it's never gonna be a GT3. But you get it, and if you get it, so first of all you want it, and then
First of all, you want it.
Exactly. First of all, you want it, and then it's like, and when you get it, then you want more, and then you get to and this is how they upsell their customers. This is why normally, in my experience, the people that I know, people that buy one Porsche, they then buy multiple Porsche. Like, it's very difficult that they buy one car and then they say, "Oh, I didn't like the brand, I didn't like the car, I walk away." So like, it's very difficult for them. Like, generally they buy something that is. A lot of people go step up or step down. Like, they say, "I buy a GT3, or it's too much for me," and then they buy something, or they have a GT3 but they also have a Carrera 2. Because they want to use it every day. Because even
and then they buy Macan
exactly
for their wives.
Because even the Carrera 2, you take it, you drive on track every other day, and the car works. Like, this is insane, because the demands on track are huge. Like, you take, honestly, guys, I don't know if I should say this, but you take any other brand of car or even sports car that you might think of, and you go on track and you hammer it like 4 hours, and then you comment under this and you tell me how it went. Because I have to tell you, I know how it will go. Either the car breaks down, or catches fire, or you run out of brakes. You take the Porsche, you go to Porsche dealership, you take any of the cars, you say, "Give me one of them." Whatever they're gonna take, they're gonna give you. You go straight on track, you drive it the whole day, you can drive it right back. It is insane. Like, it is genuinely insane. I don't know how they do it, but this is for me personally, this justifies whatever they do. Like, literally, I would buy whatever they make just because of this. And I might buy one of them and never go on track. But knowing that I can do it, which is, I think it's part of the reason why there are like Land Rover enthusiasts. It's the same thing. Like, most of them don't ever go into the desert.
Go off-road.
Yeah, they never go for it.
But they
know that car, that if you need to, or if you wanted to, that car will go through the desert like nothing. And you are willing to compromise everything. Have you been in a Land Rover, like a proper one? Like, they are horrible. Like, generally horrible things. But they are so cool. There is like such a cool. Eventually, this is what boils down to. Like, there is such a cool factor. There's like so much of an aura, like how much you want it. And this is like Land Cruisers have the same. Like, there is an aura. They are so good at being at. And this is probably also something that is good to understand. That they being so great and so capable at doing one activity sort of justifies that is very specialized, that is very demanding, then sort of justifies everything else. And I think this is what Nissan tried to do with the GTR, but they sort of lost the plot, I think, at some point, because eventually it never trickled down. Because if you buy a GTR, so first of all, the GTR is nowhere near as good as you think it is. But anyway, regardless of this, but if you buy a GTR, then it's not that you buy a 370Z and it's like half a GTR. No, it doesn't. It has nothing in common. Like literally, it doesn't drive anywhere as good. It doesn't last anywhere as long.
I think Nissan was on a good point. Out of all the Japanese manufacturers, while they could never touch Toyota in scale, they were the quirky one that had the legacy. So they have like the Z legacy. So they could actually put effort on the Z cars, and the GTR has its own important legacy on that enthusiast segment, and they would have like Qashqais that they look horrible, but they sell a ton. So they were going towards that model, and this is why you need multiple smart people in one company to actually be able to pull at all these directions.
But for example, let me ask you something. Like, how come Lotus never managed to do this? Because they had everything.
Yeah, but this is a very interesting one. And we are gonna do this at a later point. I think what Gab just did now, he summed up what exactly we're arriving to. And boys and girls that are following this video, this is why Porsche is winning. For all these reasons, for actually making us want it exactly the same way, and for exactly the reason that Gab said, you drive a Land Rover, it drives like shit. You should not want it, but you still want it, and you will have one.
Exactly.
And it's gonna be there in the corner. It's gonna be car number 3, but it's gonna be there in the corner. And exactly for this capturing this magic, and managing to make it sustainable and create a whole experience around your brand, and wanting people to actually associate, wanting people to identify themselves as Porsche owners, while actually you'd have like a Ferrari owner that would not really publicly want to say that he has like multiple Ferraris, or you would have like a McLaren owner that he doesn't feel like anything. He has a fancy car, but he doesn't really feel it. He doesn't feel the epic legacy behind him. They actually,
although they have an even more epic.
Could only succeed. They have an epic racing heritage, and they actually managed. They had like one single road car, and it was the best one ever. So they could actually, but I honestly believe like Karen McLaren, they had all the ingredients to make absolutely a huge success story out of what they're doing, because also the essence of that car. That carbon tab and that big engine, the essence is cool. We're gonna do McLaren like separate.
But I think
they didn't.
I tell you, I think for me as like McLaren never, like, to me it doesn't strike a chord, because I have driven them on track. They're not so good. So like, and
they're fast, but they're not good.
And they are, but for a short time. So like they are fast, but they break down, and it's like, and like to me, and to me, like, if I buy a McLaren, so the only reason I would consider a McLaren is because of their motorsport heritage. But it sort of seems like, and I'm completely wrong probably, it sort of seems like that when they developed the car, like, so like they went through the development of the car, so maybe this is different for the Senna, I don't know, but they went through the development of the car and they said, we have to build a road car first. Which is not wrong, of course, this is a road car first. But then it became like, so like the usability on track, or like the usability on track is, it seems it is such a small portion of what people will do. Then we will put such a small attention to it, like still a big effort, but compared to what I want the car to be on the road, it is gonna be marginal. And the problem is that this is the issue, because you don't have to give people what they want. So like, you have to make something that people will want to have. So which is exactly the opposite. So like, McLaren said, okay, let's build a fantastic road car, so people will use it on the road, right? Cool. Let's make a fantastic sports car that is a fantastic on the road, like electronic damping, no roll, but it's gonna be fantastic. You're not gonna feel the bumps or anything. There is a lot of torque, so it feels very fast, and it's fancy, and actually the first models were unnecessarily complicated, but all these sort of things. And then they said, but we are also McLaren, so they must be good on the track. So but this was like at the bottom of the list. Like they had like 20 things. It feels like to me, like if I were closing my eyes and imagining them designing the car, they would say, we need this, and we need to be faster than the Ferrari on the straight, and we need to be blah, 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 carbon tab here, and we need to have this, and this technology, and this technology, and this technology, and this technology, and this, and this, and that. And by the way, if the car is also good on track, then it's a bonus. But this is the actually I think Porsche, they say the car has to be good on track. Like literally the first thing is like we build a new car, it has to be good on track. What are we building? A Panamera 4 doors. It has to be good on track. Like this is what we want. We have it.
Exactly. But by doing this, they end up with solid products. So actually, there are more Panameras, and Cayennes testing out there at industry pool every single day than any other of these similar segment cars. And you would clearly say they don't need to be testing Panameras. Why they do this? Why they are testing Cayennes?
Because this is their brand. The brand is this. The brand is motorsport.
Exactly.
If you want to buy motorsport derived cars, you only can buy Porsches. Everything else is road cars.
And it's even more complicated because, for example, the genesis of McLaren, the road car, it actually comes from this beautiful brain that is like Gordon Murray. So, of course, like in his head, extremely charismatic race designer, a guy that actually builds any type of race cars for a living with that success. When he wants to make a road car, you clearly know that he's going to make something unique. So he actually took the unique way that his brain works. He actually put a lot of talented people around him, and he went out to create the ultimate road car. And because he was a race car designer, everything else trickled down into it, but it had a voice, and it had to have like a very unique engine, and it had a few specific things that made almost certain that the McLaren F1 might not sell on the day, but it would be an iconic car. I believe that people that knew,
but it was built anyway to be competitive on track, in the first place. So.
Exactly. And then the track DNA was in there. And I think when they tried to reverse engineer this and add enough road car in modern McLaren, but still have some innovation and still be able to make multiple cars out of that one single tab and have one engine that they will use it everywhere, they didn't understand that they actually watered it down so much that they lost this thing. And I believe that Porsche is doing the opposite. They sort of found out that people are particularly interested in this sort of type of recipe that we have created, and they try every possible way to keep it alive in the next iteration.
You know
this
something?
Is why actually
Costas,
people end up wanting these cars.
This is what M Sport is also. BMW M Sport is exactly the same. So why do you want an E30? Because the E30 because it's motorsport. It's like it was built like the M cars were built to be good. Like the 1M was built as a race cars, and they needed then it became a road car because the homologation changed and then this, and then they said, okay, let's put this engine in the M5, but there was like motorsport heritage at least in the engine, and then in the E30 M3 that there was like all this motorsport. And I have to say, it feels to me that this has been unfortunately a little bit watered down, like a little bit lost, in a sense that now they are fancy versions of standard BMWs. But don't get me wrong, fantastic cars, but it's I don't know, to me it feels like it's missing something, also because they don't build the same thing.
But it is missing something. You don't
but
feel
also
it.
because they don't build
it.
They are not building the same thing. So the M4 is by nature a sport sedan, is more of a powerful road car rather than a pure sports car. But in the origins though of the M Sport brand, where literally actually M is for motorsport, literally. So, and it's like you look back at the history of the brand with all these, as I said, E30s racing in DTM when DTM was even remotely related to road cars, and this is where they built it. This is why people still now want to buy an M Sport car over an AMG, for example, or over.
And this is why. Exactly, but this is why in the last 10 years they are probably doing everything they can. I believe honestly they kind of lost direction after them too, and the new cars, you can clearly see that they are not going there. The different transmission is clearly part of the problem. The extreme weight is clearly part of the problem, and the they clearly are not watering down the right way. Other manufacturers do this as well. You have to use parts from a specific bin, and you have to make the whole thing make sense financially.
I think eventually,
Well, AMG doing the opposite. AMG is actively trying to make better driver cars for the last 15 years.
Actually, AMG is on the rise, and they've been working very hard. And I know firsthand, for example, about these driving events. They are also like knee deep into them, and because they understand the value of them. But I think the main, in my opinion, the main difference is that Porsche is motorsport, so was motorsport heritage, is motorsport heritage, and then at some point they started building Boxster also, and then they started building Cayenne also, and then they started building Panameras also, and then they started building Macans also. If Porsche already had Macans and Cayennes and Panameras and then decided, okay, let's try to be motorsport now, it would be impossible.
Exactly, but even when they do like exercises that are clearly like parts bin cars, like the
Macan, they still know that they have to justify it. They still know that
the same way. They have to justify them, and they are not faking it. I honestly believe that they are actually, the core values are always there, and they are just making it financially viable. And they take a ton amount of money of what they make, and they put it back into keeping that motorsport character alive. Like, and whatever they do, they keep it alive. And this is how we started.
Exactly. I just realized that this is exactly how you started, in the sense that they managed to take a failing business, which is motorsport. So building cars that are good on track is the best way to run out of money. They were running out of money. They did run out of money. And then, I believe, 50% luck and 50% they knew what they were doing. They sort of, struck the mother lode and
turned it around. Exactly.
And turned it around completely, so much so that they are capable of building their best motorsport products ever, financed by their more generalistic cars ever.
Exactly.
So,
and that is a
which are still
story.
good on the track, because their DNA is that one, and it's transferred.
That is why you want to, in the end, that is also why you want to own a Porsche, and then you want to own multiple Porsches. And it's exactly why we both, while we consider ourselves like a very, very pure people, that we don't really believe in brands, we don't wear fancy clothes, we don't have like fancy watches, we don't believe like in premium lifestyle, we kinda would still consider a premium car from that brand. And I will go one step further and tell you that one of the reasons that we ended up doing this discussion is because me and Gab, we were talking about Porsche, like in the 24-hour race that just passed. They did this cool group shot of multiple, Porsche brand cars that they were about to race. And I will tell you that they were 33 Porsche cars racing in different categories out there. So it's not like the GT3R is an exercise and that they have the top cars and it's there. For example, like Audi.
No.
Audi only had the customer race cars, and they, of course, all the manufacturers are very important. BMW, if BMW wasn't there, there might not have been a 24-hour race at all this year. And Mercedes, they put a substantial effort, as Gab said. Not a discussion in this video. However, when you see 33 out of the how many cars, Gab? How many cars were in this race? Exactly, 125.
But I think there were more BMWs, because I have to say still that while we might disagree with some of the direction that BMW is currently taking, BMW is still the brand with the most amount of presence in motorsport, at least in Germany. Like
here, at least in Germany, exactly.
There is a massive amount of cars, and if you look at RCN, there is a massive amount of cars that race.
BMWs. Same way that in the US, in the US there was a time that at any given weekend there were more Mazda racers, grassroots racers out there than any other brand. But I would say that Porsche is the only company, and I don't say this lightly, is the only company that managed to take this racing genes and that tradition and incorporate it in what they currently do and leave enough of that DNA alive in the actual product, because we, for example, as Mazda, that we used this as an example recently, Mazda not only hasn't capitalized on that past, not only hasn't capitalized on that racing, but actually us driving their sportier current model, the ND, or what used to be like their current sportier model.
Yeah.
We
That's a
actually
good
sort
point.
of not only didn't find the missing link, but we actually felt a little bit disappointed. While exactly the opposite happened when you get your first Cayman or your first 911 GT car, you go out on the racetrack. Not only you don't get disappointed, you absolutely fell more in love with it. Gab, let's finish this off with something a little bit more personal, because what we have been discussing up until now is like a little bit general.
Yeah.
And if you're following up until that moment, that question also goes to you. So, Gab,
What is your dream car? Comment
money,
below.
no object. Money, no object. What would be your dream Porsche? So you said before that you wouldn't buy a 991 GT3. So, money, no object. What would you buy?
Money no object, I would get myself a 997 GT3 RS 4 liter.
Very difficult to argue with that. Do you want to say why? Or
Well, because I think it's a combination of things, in the sense that the 996, 997 was the pinnacle of sport of the Porsche GT car, where at an age where I was the most impressionable about cars. So like it left a big mark. This is why like my father likes cars that are like 40 years older, and because like you have like there is an age where you are really into it, and you really love it, and it is
the formative years.
Completely unobtainable, and it is the dream, absolutely the dream. And to me, this sort of fell in between those ages, like 996 Mark II GT3, 997 Mark 1 GT3, and 997 Mark II GT3. In reality, I think the 997 4 liter it came a little bit later, was 2011, so I was already a little bit older, but the car that really got me going was the 996 GT3.2. So this would be the car that I really wanted. But the 997 GT3 RS point 2 is the ultimate iteration of the same car. So like the same thing. And then the 991 is a completely new car. Like there's
But
nothing to do.
the 4 liter is that
The 4 liter is
boost.
the 4 liter is a pointless thing, because the 3.8 standard GT3 RS is a fraction of the price, and it is
fantastic car.
99.99% the same. But like you said, money no object, so I would get what I want to get, and
Correct.
And
Perfect.
that's the car. That's the car for me. What would be it for you?
For me, it's a bit tricky. I would probably money no object. I would probably want like my own spec singer. So it would actually not be an original Porsche, because you know that I love the old cars. So money no object for me, that was this. Guys, if you have followed this conversation up until now, thank you very much. And we would appreciate a lot to hear what would be. So do you like Porsche? And if money would be no object, what would be like your dream Porsche? And if it wouldn't be a Porsche, feel free to comment below what it would be. So we can actually also understand maybe about which company you would like us to hear more, because we have an experience with all these different cars, and we think that all these different brands, like especially this top level, performance cars from all the brands are very interesting. So we would love to also discuss about these other cars that we have opinions about. So feel free to comment below. That has been a very enjoyable chat, Gab.
It was. Thank you very much, Kostas, for bringing up this beautiful topic, which a lot of the stuff that we discussed, I just realized, and was really cool. Don't forget, if you like this, don't forget to click like and subscribe to the channel, and also comment underneath it. Eventually, at some point, these will be available as podcasts. I don't know. Kostas is on it, but he's Greek, so you never know. And Kostas, thank you very much, and I will see you next time.
Same here.